On today's show, it is part 2 with Glen Willis talking all things Kobe Bufkin, and here we go with that.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1785 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Monday here in mid to late August. Today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app right now, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase with Gametime. Terms apply. I also want to encourage you at the top of the podcast to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find podcasts. That includes YouTube. Please like this episode as you're watching it. Plus, Spotify, Apple, etc., etc. This is part 2 of 2 with myself and Glen Willis talking about Kobe Bufkin. So if you missed it, I recommend starting with part 1. It should be available in this same feed right now, and I would start there. It's kind of a free-flowing conversation, but still, part 1's available for you. This is part 2. More on Kobe Bufkin, a very interesting player to discuss. At the end of the podcast, we'll also get into a little bit of a sprinkling on David Roddy and Don Barlow. So stay tuned for that at the end of the show. And without any further delay, here we go with part 2 with myself and Glen. We should talk about his defense. We've alluded to it. Let's get into that now. I don't think we said this in the first part of this discussion. He's only 20 years old as we're talking still. I know he's a 2-year player in college, and it's something we talked about in the draft process, but he was a very, very young 2-and-done. Like, he was basically freshman age in the draft. He'll be 21 pretty soon, but he's 20 years old still. And one thing I want to say about his defense, in addition to him just playing well on that end of the floor, is that he's got great size. 6'4" without shoes on, 6'8" wingspan. Like, that's really, really impressive. Like, comparing him to Trey is silly, tools wise, but like, he's much, much bigger, much, much longer, much, much rangier than a small guard like Trey is. I don't really think of Kobe as a small guard. If he's playing the 2, he's small for sure. I'll acknowledge that. But like, does that make sense? I don't really view Kobe as small guard size. He's like pretty. He's still pretty skinny, to be fair. He's got to get stronger, and they always want to tell you that. But he's got great measurables for that kind of point of attack guy.
Yeah, it does. It does show up that way. And really, when it comes to him getting stronger, to me, it's more about just managing wear and tear, right? His technique is. I think people don't realize how much you can overcome a little bit of a strength size deficit with good technique. And there's a lot of that there. But I mean, certainly adding 5 to 10 pounds, which is a lot, doesn't sound like a lot, but it gives you just that much more kind of strength to work with to keep guys out of the core of your body, manage space, have a little bit more neutral physical interaction and exchange as opposed to kind of always being at 80-20. That stuff really adds up across the season.
Oh, definitely. It definitely does. And I think that's the first thing that the Hawks have said about guys like Reece Shea. Dyson is deceptively strong. I don't think he needs to gain much because he's very skinny, but he is very, very strong. But Kobe's already there. Like, he's not going to be getting blown around by point guards at the very least. We've alluded to this before, but I think Kobe is a prime example, if not the prime example, along with Veet. I think the two of them of the Ryan Schmidt College Park development pipeline defensively. I really liked Kobe as a defensive prospect coming out of Michigan. I will say that. But also, as someone who watched all of his games at Michigan very closely, a lot of it was more theoretical than actual. You know what I mean? There were signs of it, but he really, really was more consistent and better defensively, especially as a rookie, than I would have imagined. Because, as I am prone to say, rookie guards are generally awful defensively. Like, even when they're supposed to be good, most of them are not good defensively. And I don't want to overstate it either. It wasn't like he was coming in, he was prime Gary Payton. But Kobe was already pretty good defensively, at least for me. I wonder what you make of his defensive output. Again, small sample sizes everywhere. But I was really impressed when you start to grade on the curve of being a rookie guard. Like, he showed a lot for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, man, we could do like a 3-series podcast breaking into his defense, But for me, it starts with his habits. And his habits are impeccable, right? Communication, being the point guard, being the first guy back in transition and getting everybody organized. The connectivity, noticing when players aren't connected and getting it addressed and getting it fixed. I mean, his leadership jump on the defensive end just jumps out at you every single possession. And that's huge. And for example, like, and when he's, low man, he's not just kind of trying to get the rim at the last. I mean, he's early. His hands are always up and out. He's taking away as much space in the passing lane as possible, and that's. I mean, I've said before, like, oh, they should always have the like. You don't know. I want to challenge our listener. If you think it should be easy to just have your hands up on defense all the time, go out in your driveway or whatever and run around for 45 seconds with your hands stretched way out. I want you to tell me how
it's not easy. There's a reason why it's noticeable when guys do it, because it's really hard to actually do that. Even for NBA players, it's hard.
It is very hard, right? But he does it consistently, and so just all the little stuff and all the habits and all the principles, it's all like on point all the time. And that's about mental processing. That's about attention to the detail. Maybe the most, it's about commitment to playing that way consistently. And, I made I don't remember which game it was. I made a comment on Twitter. I'm still calling it Twitter, by the way. Last year, like when you watch him play, you're like, he really could be a defensive culture setter for this team, because he's the one guy who's like consistently doing all the little stuff that you want your players to do. And that's exciting to me. As a person who watches them all the time, and I also have another part of me that is a Hawks fan. I really keep my analytical self, my fan self away. But you don't want to kind of jump to like, oh, 3 years from now he's going to be an all defensive level player. It's so hard to know if physically he can get there and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, also guys who win those awards are in great defensive systems and be part of great defensive team and have help, right? Yep. And those things. So. But for the defense, it's just all of that. I remember, I know I'm kind of jumping around on you, so I'll let you react. But the one game that jumps out in my memory last year was the Dallas game where he was defending Kyrie for a lot, a good bit. Kyrie could not do anything with him on the perimeter. I mean, and so Kyrie started getting really physical with him and just pushing him into the paint. And Kobe it took 8, 10, 12 possessions for him to get to even maybe almost neutral defending physically. And Kyrie's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. Like, okay, this guy's pretty quick and he's kind of getting into me on perimeter. I'm going to take him inside. And that's the kind of stuff where you're like, okay, if he's defending at the 2, if Dyson goes down, whatever, that's what he's going to deal with. Guys are going to try to be really, really physical with him. And just like on offense, there's reps he hasn't had of a certain type. On defense, same thing. Like, can he defend a guy who's 6'5", 215 pounds and has an above average handle and can kind of create? Those are the things he needs, those reps to kind of do that. Off the ball, organizing, connecting, all that stuff is almost perfect. Can it scale to at some point if you starter level, like with that, whenever that might be in his future or what have you? But it's the physical challenge of taking on a guy who's a lot bigger than you, and it's just like, I'm going to take you inside. I'm just going to drive right through you to the paint. That's the stuff that you step back and go, I don't know that he's ready for that part.
Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. And when you're thinking about your absolute non-negotiables for self-care, what do you think about? Maybe you actually never miss yours. That'd be awesome, of course. But when your schedule is packed with projects or travel, it can be hard sometimes to make time for yourself. When you feel like you have no time for yourself, those non-negotiable things like therapy become more important than ever. Therapy is helpful for everyone, honestly, and can help you focus on what you are looking for, what you want, instead of what others might happen to have. Then that starts to help you live your best possible life. You can learn positive coping skills, set better boundaries. I have my own stresses in my life, of course, and we also benefit from getting things off our chest sometimes. And the folks at BetterHelp are really helpful with that. If you're thinking about starting therapy at all, give BetterHelp a try right now. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient and it's flexible to your schedule. And that's really huge if you are someone like me navigating a lot of sort of time crunches like I often happen to be. BetterHelp is awesome with that. And all you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. You can also switch therapists anytime if you want to for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with the folks at BetterHelp. And you can visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. One more time, the place to go is BetterHelp. That's BetterHelp. BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Not to compare him and Veet, but there's some crossover there as far as like the unprovenness of both guys. And Veet's been around longer, but he's played a little bit more, of course, than Kobe has. But he was in the wilderness for a while, as we talked about in our last discussion, you and I. And they have similar, they're kind of skinny. They could be overpowered sometimes. But they have good instincts, all those things. You're all right. You're absolutely right. There's always a key distinction between like he's making great progress and like where he actually is in certain aspects. And that's how it's the case for every rookie. I have this pet peeve of people, not just Hawks, I'm talking about just across the league. Like there's always this impetus to talk about guys like they've already gotten to the point that they might get to, if that makes sense. As with star player, I won't name any names for now, but like guys who are in year 2, year 3 and get discussed like they're already in year 6 and they're not. They're maybe on the way there. Right. And that's fair to say about Kobe. Like we don't want to do that. We want to make that distinction because he was impressive for a rookie. Like the fact that you're praising his off ball, the stuff that you're praising, just for everybody to listen, like that's not the stuff that you usually see from rookies. It's usually the other stuff that might flash more. And that's the usual stuff that takes a while to figure out is the off ball stuff, the connectivity and all that. That's the stuff that comes later for a lot of guys. And him doing that early is really, really impressive. And I do think that just defending point guards, I'm not saying it's going to be great, but I have pretty strong evidence from what we've seen so far that he's going to be pretty good just as a point guard, point of attack defender. Like his screen navigation was pretty good, I thought, this year. Yep. I'll let you react to that in a second too. Like that kind of stuff, I don't really worry about. But you're right. If you're going to ask him this year and in the future to play next to Trey or play next to another guard and have the scale up matchups, can he do that? That's a question that we have to see answered. I vividly remember that Dallas game now that you bring it up. And while he does have the side, like I mentioned before, one of the questions and maybe one of the downsides of the combo guard, and I'm using the in big quotes now, is that you could argue, if you want to be negative about it, maybe you're a tweener at the end of the day. Maybe you're a little bit too small to guard wings, and you're not the best. There's always that risk with those kind of archetypes as well that you become a third guard. And I've argued before, and I'll argue again right now, that if Kobe becomes a really good third guard, that's a totally fine outcome from 15th pick in the draft. That's a good, useful player. Like that's not a bad scenario at all. But there is, of course, the risk of that, and it is what it is. But I was impressed with the off-ball stuff like you were, and I think the point guard stuff is already kind of there too defensively. It's just can you put it all together? Because I'm not sure if you've already seen this, Glenn, but I'm sure it's going to happen. People are going to compare Dyson's defense to Kobe's defense. That's going to happen, and Dyson is further ahead, and that makes sense. Dyson is number one; he's bigger, but also he has another year of NBA experience, which matters. I really more than
and a ton of international experience.
Right. International experience, 2 years in the NBA, and Kobe's year in professional basketball was marked by injury. So like he got a year of experience. That's not nothing, but it's like, however you want to say it, it's maybe like it's a half a year of experience. You know what I mean? It's not the same as Dyson's got 2 full years of that, and he's already stronger, all those things. And again, that's not fair to Kobe because Dyson's already, I think we've agreed, pretty awesome defensively already in year 2. But Kobe's got a ways to go. But I know he said it, but I'm really, really intrigued about what it can be. It's just that there is the uncertainty of like how much it scales. And again, this is more of a 2 years from now question, but it could happen this year too. Him being tasked with I don't mean this pejoratively, but playing next to Trey defensively is a different task than playing by yourself. Or not by yourself. You know what I mean? Like being the point guard defensively is different than playing next to Trey. And ultimately, the Hawks, I think, are hoping that he can be the guy that plays next to Trey and helps Trey. I don't want to use the word cover up for because that gets overused and Trey's got to do his own stuff. But the idea of the Jonte, and that obviously didn't work out, but the idea was always, hey, he'll cover up for Trey. Like that didn't obviously happen. Dyson, I think, could probably do that already. Can Kobe do that in 2 years? We'll see.
Yeah, it's all very interesting because I think when it comes to Trey, there's a multidimensional set of objectives on defense, right? One is you don't want to overtax him on defense because you need all of his juice on offense, right? That's how he's going to predominantly help you win games. But at the same time, you want to have a realistic level of accountability for what Trey is giving you on defense too. And when you have bigger defenders, when you have defenders that play with more force, better technique, have more length, all that sort of stuff, that allows you to meet a right size your ask of Trey on defense. And some Hawks fans will be like, to me, irrationally, like, its expectations should be the same. No, that's never the case. That's never true. Anyone who's going to be, top 5 in the league in offensive usage, you're going to have to offset that workload somewhere. The Hawks have not had the defensive makeup rotationally to be able to kind of do that, right? They've had a team where they could not keep Trey from being low man if they wanted to. And the other team just 15 possessions around Trey's low man. That's a Trey.
Just not to cut you off, but like even guys who are better than Trey defensively, who have a lot more traits, a lot more size than Trey defensively, the number one guy on offense has different expectations defensively. Like, I mean, I'm trying to think of a name to say that will like make the point. But even the guys who like we know are good defenders, like, okay, just pick like Anthony Edwards or pick, John
Morant,
Jason Tatum, John Morant, whoever.
Yeah.
But like, let's use Ant, right? Because Ant's got the physical tools are fantastic. We all understand this. And when he turns it on defensively, he can be really good and really impactful. But if you watch him every game, every night, he's not turning it on like that. And that's, by the way, totally fair. If you're the primary initiator on offense, no one's doing that. Like, all due respect to anybody, like no primary guy, number one option on the perimeter, point guard size or wing size is the number one defender every night. It doesn't happen. Yeah. And there's a reason for that. So just to back you up on that, obviously it's a little bit different with Trey because you're hiding him a little bit more than some of those guys, but it's the same principle.
Yeah. The only like guard historically that I can really think, I mean, you kind of go back to Gary Payton. Of course, the game was much slower than fewer possessions of the game, right? And more recently, obviously, Steph is the guy that, despite not having like all these tools on defense, just works his butt up on defense all the time and does all the little stuff. And
they still hide him, by the way. But they still hide him all the time on purpose.
So, yeah, absolutely. They do everything they can to keep him off the ball, right? They keep him out of screens. They taught him how to navigate screens to not get stuck on the ball handler. They never let him be low man, unless the team just kind of really forces some sort of fairly sophisticated way to do that. That's where the Hawks have to get to. The Hawks have to kind of get there, right? Expectations are still you play hard, you rotate, you close out, you get to when you're the weak side helper at the 3-point break, you get to the nail, you impact the ball handler. Just all those basic kind of principles and stuff. All those expectations are there. But to expect Trey to like defend on like to get switched onto the ball 20 times a game and feel like no, that's a terrible plan. To have Trey to not be able to keep Trey out of low man is a terrible plan. And they had the last 2-3 seasons they've had no ability to do that. Kobe is awesome as low man, right? His impact there is awesome, And so you saw all of a sudden like V wasn't part of the plan all of last year. Keaton wasn't on the team last year. Kobe was hurt last year. Dyson wasn't on the. So now you have solutions that can allow you to say, Trey, this is our plan for you on defense. And I would think for Trey to say, I can do that, right? Where in the past it's been 4x of what you really need to ask of Trey.
And he showed signs last year. We acknowledged that a lot, but Trey did his, I think it was very clearly his best defensive season ever.
That's how he got hurt.
Is that
his hands is how he got hurt.
That's actually true. And granted, I will admit that's a very low bar to clear to have it be his best defensive season, but he made notable strides. And I know it gets ignored nationally, and we'll say that for the Trey episode, but he did make strides. And I think the system around him, and going back to Kobe, like having a guy like Dyson, having a guy like hopefully what they're thinking Kobe's going to be is as soon as this year, maybe not this year, but in the future, having those three guys, Dyson, Veit, and Kobe. If you want to throw in Keaton, sure, as well. Yep. But all three of those guys to help Trey do what he needs to do and be the primary point of attack guy on every night or whatever is very helpful because, we've said this before, in years past, they didn't really have anybody like that. I mean, they had DeJounte, who kind of did it a little bit, wasn't very good at it. We've discussed many times. Not his fault necessarily. It's just what it was. But now they have options there, which helps. Yeah. And Kobe's one of those options.
There'll be times when against Cleveland, Keaton might be on the floor defending Donovan Mitchell down the stretch. Anthony Edwards down.
I think they use Trent that way. They use Trent that same way. I mean, people hated it because Trent's offense is so bad, and we acknowledge that. But Keaton, can we shoot? He's got to be guarded, and that'd be a little bit better to hide if you have to do that. Hopefully, Kobe's doing that instead of Keaton. That's the thing. Yeah, that's the hope.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm just saying that there will be times in a close game where you're like, I just need a bigger defender. That might be 8 games in the season. I'm not saying it's going to be 25 games or whatever. But there are going to be times when it's just like we're gonna that's what we're gonna turn to. And Kobe might not play the last 6 minutes, where he might otherwise be in the mix, kind of be on the floor. And so once again, even on defense, month over month improvement, being stronger on the ball, right? His screen navigation, to your point, was very good for a rookie last year. His ability to know exactly where that screener is and to know which angle his ball handler is going to try to take to get to the screen and just taking that away. I mean, Keaton did that a million times in summer league. Just nope, you're not getting to your screener. You're just not, And Kobe doesn't have the size. Yeah, Kobe doesn't necessarily have the size that Keaton has, just to say not happening. But he's going to make you take a longer route to your screener, which gives all of your help defenders more time to kind of get into position and all that stuff. So his screen navigation is really good. But again, on offense, I think there is what I envision is a need for bigger strides of consistency month over month over month. On defense, it's not as big of strides of consistency. It's specific areas like defending bigger guys at the point of attack, learning how to handle that, learning what technique to use, learning how to be proactive, beating a guy to a spot or whatever it is. That's the stuff where I think on defense, the strides aren't as big. There's a few areas where I think that the faster he can stabilize his defensive play in those areas, I think that really makes a big difference and gives Quinn more flexibility on how he kind of swings lineups and rotations game to game depending upon the matchup.
I totally agree, and it's going to be interesting to see what he kind of progresses as on both ends of the floor. Just to say, as I have his numbers from it, I don't think I've ever said it. And there is much more to life than blocks and steals. I think blocks and steals can get overvalued, but Kobe's actually already showing signs of being a habit creator, let's say, defensively. He had 7 steals and 5 blocks in his tiny NBA sample last year, which 5 blocks as a guard is rather impressive. He also had, I believe it was like a half a block a game in the G League, more than a steal per game. So like there's some event creation he can do defensively, which could be very helpful as well because the Hawks would like to do that. They haven't been able to do a lot of it because they haven't had the personnel for it. But going back to the same thing, like I think Kobe can do a little bit of that. Again, I don't want to say that's the end all be all because it's not. And I think that the Hawks would probably admit that. But a little bit of a sprinkle on top is that Kobe can help juice your offensive stuff in transition, protect the rim a little bit on the backside. Guards can't really do that in general. But I think Kobe in the 2 years from now iteration might be able to be something of a secondary rim protector compared to most guards, which would be helpful. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime, and Gametime is the best place to find tickets. There's nothing like checking out a live event, whether it's sports, music, theater, or a comedy. And at Gametime, they have a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets even easier for you. They filter out all the stuff that you don't need and only show you the incredible deals on great seats that you actually do need, so you don't have to waste any time searching through thousands of different ticket options on the app. For example, there are awesome deals this week for Braves Phillies in Atlanta, a big-time showdown in the baseball world, including a pair of tickets for $16 each, including fees, on Tuesday. That's a really awesome deal, and there's a lot more of that happening at Gametime. Plus, it's my personal favorite feature of Gametime as well, and that you can view the seats through all-in pricing if you want to toggle that option on. So you have to have any surprise fees at the checkout screen when you get to the end. Also get a panoramic view of the seats that you're looking for in the app before you buy them, so you know exactly what you're getting into when you get into the venue, when you arrive. And you're also getting the lowest possible price guaranteed with the folks at Gametime. Take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app right now, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem that promo code. It is LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Yeah, and then we haven't gotten into the rebounding. So,
yeah, we should note that. Go on that because that's because again, this team's had some defensive rebounding issues in particular, especially when Clint's not playing or Jalen. They basically have the last couple of years. They've had 2 guys who I would describe as good rebounders, and Clint and Jalen are the only 2 guys on the team that I would say that about. DeAndre Hunter, weakness. Okongwu was fine, but isn't great. And having some guard rebounding would be helpful. DeJounte did a little bit of that, but I think Kobe's got the ability to really scale that up a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Kobe just has a good instinct. And some of that just comes down to he's so resourceful, right? Mm-hmm. And he's always moving, always looking to do little things that can help. I always, in my brain, again, probably 50% Hawk fans will stop using this, all the little Horford stuff, right? Even guard Horford's, Kobe's always doing that stuff, right? Where it's I can help. Jalen's under the rim on his rebound. I'm going to go get into the back of his rebounder and just not let that guy jump. He just does all this little stuff that helps you. Sometimes it's just him coming to get the ball, getting on the floor, those sorts of things. But he will go help a teammate who was in an under-leveraged rebounding position and just give his team a better chance to rebound the ball. Quinn talked nonstop last year about gang rebounding, team rebounding. He really believes in that stuff, and that's something that Kobe excels at already, which is impressive for a 20-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, I think people that know our work and people that maybe don't, all these little things, and I describe them as little things, they're not little. It's just that they're thought about as little nuanced things, or I think kind of why we like Kobe so much.
And that's the stuff that builds trust with coaches too, and that's important to know.
Yeah, no, and that's not to say it another time, but the coaching staff in particular really likes Kobe, and I think it's been hard for some people. And I get it. It wasn't a weird fit draft pick, but when they had DeJounte, it's okay, I got a question a lot. Why are they drafting another 6'4" guard? Like, and I get it. And my thought was maybe there's a time when they don't have Dre DeJounte anymore, and here we are at that time. But also, they drafted best player available. They thought he was the best player available on the board. You can argue with that. I'm not saying he's going to be the best player they could have taken, but that was their thought. They liked all of the stuff around Kobe, and the player, and I think that makes sense.
And the human being, right? Yeah, and the human being too, right? I mean, we saw that with Reacher. Guys talking about, I'm willing to do my role. I'm willing to do this. I know I have to shoot. I know this is what they're going to ask me to do. These are the things I need to do. Kobe does all that stuff too, where it's just like he buys into what he's asked to do. And with, talking to Quinn, listening to Quinn, if you just even connect the dots on things that are half casual, he says he really, really cares about guys embracing their role, buying into what they're asking him to do, and Kobe fits that to a T.
Yes, I think that will be big this year in particular, because as we sort of led this conversation, there's a world in which he's not the backup point guard on opening night, and they go with Dyson and they go with Veed or whatever else, and that's very much in play. That training camp, as much as training camp is actually the actual training camp's not very long, but training camp come out preseason games, that like 3-week period will be very interesting because he's missed so much time and all that stuff. Before I let you get out of here, I teased this at the very beginning of this conversation, but you went kind of sicko mode on this Sunday as we're recording this, and I very much appreciated it. I teased it on Twitter, but you went through a lot of film on a couple of deep guys on this roster, David Roddy and Dom Barlow, both of whom we talked about a little bit on the pod with you in the past, but I see you're watching film. So I will ask it this way. Is there anything that stuck out to you enough to where you want to talk about on this podcast about either David Roddy or Dom Barlow?
Yeah, so I mean, two things. One is you might notice that when I'm breaking down what I consider to be a kind of a defensive player, if that player played significant minutes against the Warriors, that's what I go watch first. Because the Warriors challenge you off the ball. Like if you want to see what a guy can do, right? They challenge you. And so both the games I broke down were both Warriors games for both players. When I broke down Dyson about a month back, I chose a Clippers game because I wanted to see him defend Harden, and it was a lot of Harden, right? In this case, a couple things with Roddy. One is what jumped out at me offensively is his ability to make a play on the move. Catch the ball on the move, make the pass on the move. And that is something historically that has limited the Hawks. Not a strength for JC when he was here. Never going to be a strength for Clint.
Yep.
Hunter is still a bit more choppy than that, right? With the right kind of line of sight, Hunter can sometimes show that he can do that. But I mean, I saw Roddy diving in the pick and roll, catch the ball at the nail, turn around, make a pass to a guy in the weak side corner, weak side 3-point. I mean, just really, really impressive. And then there were times too that just he would find a smaller defender in front of him, and he would attack the paint. And he's not some great finisher. He's not he doesn't have the most verticality in the world and those things. But I think you can, if you go look at what I posted, you can see why Quinn kind of buys into him as a depth piece, right? As a guy who can do things that really, as a passer, Hunter can't do. Do it as a passer that Clint can't do. And it's kind of funny because in that game against the Warriors, they played Roddy at center on offense when Jaren Jackson wasn't on the floor. They played him at 2 and 3 on defense. He defended Clay more than anybody in that game.
Yeah.
And his screen navigation was good. Top block ton of technique was good and all of that. But I was impressed with like how well he moved a lot better than I expected defending guards and just dealing with screens and all that sort of stuff. So to me, like when I think about Kobe, a little on the lighter side, a little on the lighter side. I mean, there are games where they could turn to Roddy to go out and deal with a guy who's 240, 250 pounds. Hey, Roddy, we just need 8 minutes from you, like 4 minutes, or maybe the 4 minutes in the first half goes well, so we're going to give you 7 in the second half. But he gives them the option of having a guy who can deal with guards, and Clay could not get separation from him ever in that game. He just could not get separation from him in that game. And Clay started becoming a screener. By the middle of the third quarter, Clay was setting ball screens to try to get Roddy off of him. Yeah. And so in that sense, I think he has I can't project. I'm not saying he's going to be part of their rotation. I don't think he's going to be. I think he's a guy Quinn can turn to and he's a bigger defender on a guard or a wing, right? And I was surprised at his effectiveness doing that. So I'll cover Barlow too, but I don't know if you wanted to kind of.
No, I would back that up. And also that's the rep that Roddy had in college. Like he kind of broke out when he was a little bit later in college as a scorer, but he was a connector. I think he could be a connector. And, I mentioned this before when he signed, like the shot's got to go in for him to be like kind of really be a rotation player. But I totally agree with you. Like there's a specialized role for him almost certainly. And I keep hearing from people that are around the team, like that's kind of why they did the trade. It wasn't like they hated EJ Liddell. It was just that we think they have a little bit more utility in the short term, at least with Roddy. And I think I think you just nailed it. Like if something happens to let's just say something happens to DeAndre Hunter, they don't really have another like guy like that defensively. That's like a bulky, him and Hunter are not the same either, but like
and it killed him last year.
Only guy like that now.
Yeah, and it killed him last year when Jalen and Hunter were out. They had literally no one.
They had no one, and that's the theory. I think is like because Jalen's not like the most on ball. Anyway, we'll get into Jalen later, but I think that they looked at what happened last year. That's part of why they did this. I feel like they wanted another guy who they think they can trust defensively against a big wing, and I think that Roddy could definitely do that. Because long term, Sorry, go ahead.
I'm excited, I'm excited. But it's just one more example of where 9 through 17, this team is much better, right?
Yeah. And by the way, I agree with you. Like, I don't think he's going to play a lot, but I can definitely see the wrong 2 injuries or the right 2 for him, and suddenly he's playing 12 minutes a game, and that wouldn't stun me at all.
Or just the random matchup on a Tuesday night in the middle of the season where you're like, I need some, I need someone to go deal with LeBron for 5 minutes of half, or
whatever. If Hunter, Hunter's the Luka stopper. If you're playing Dallas and you don't have Hunter for some reason, Hunter tweaks an ankle, Roddy might be the next guy up on Luka.
Absolutely.
Like,
that's true.
Maybe it's Dyson because Dyson's obviously really your stopper, but Luka's got a certain body type about him. It's not quite the same as what you'd want. Anyway, I agree with you on that.
Kevin on our pod threw out kind of a PJ Tucker, and PJ, especially in his younger, can switch on the guards, deal with that. Roddy has more ball skill than PJ did at this point in his career. PJ made himself to a very good shooter, and that really changed the whole trajectory of his career. We'll have to see if that happens with Roddy. On the Barlow side, like the defensive technique is pretty rough in the big man stuff. I had one good example of playing drop, one bad example of him playing drop, a rough example of him being low man. I think you watch that. First of all, if you watch a whole game, effort's always there. He's always working. He's always trying. He's always sprinting. So that's a good starting point. But you can just tell he doesn't have any reps doing big man defensive stuff like NBA, none, like almost none. And he played a good bit last year, but you could just tell every time you go sample a game, you'd be like, man, it looks like he's doing this for the first time.
Well, and
that's where he is.
Where he went overtime elite, basically straight to the G League. Like he never really got some of the seasoning that you would have gotten. I'm with you.
Yeah, but on offense, again, like there's some it's pretty raw right now. But there's some connecting stuff. He has good passing, Phil. I put a play where a 3-point shooter cut behind him, and he just turned around and delivered. Like he knew he was there. His ability to, when a ball handler is probing, always creating and maintaining a passing lane, being hands and feet ready. So just a lot of little attention to detail. On defense, there's a long way to go, and I think he's going to spend a lot of time in College Park playing center and learning how to do that. And I think that's going to be, going from Chris Silva to him is going to be a challenge for that group, but I think he's worth the investment to kind of give him the opportunity to kind of play there. But offensively, even playing on the catch, it looks a little ugly at times, but he's executing the right process. And then there's for sure skill development that needs to kind of catch up with attempt at process execution. But I think he's a guy that, at some point this season, you watch him and go, wow, he's really improved, and then is he in play for next season? I don't know. I don't expect him to contribute anything meaningful this year at all. But as when you and I talked about heading into the summer league, getting guys in your system that you can use 1 to 2 year timeline, not just one season, to develop into being viable players, that's what helps an organization do things like what Miami has historically done, bringing undrafted free agents, in their case, usually, maybe a late second round draft pick, over 1, 2, sometimes 3 seasons to being a fully fledged guy that they're proud to kind of throw on the court and make work. So his length is great, and his ability to use his length is impressive even for a young guy. He has a lot of development to do, but when I watch him play, like I have confidence he works hard, and that he's trying to do the right thing, and that he's trying to focus on the right things. That's a great starting point. So I'm excited to see kind of what progress he makes this year, even if a lot of his game right now is still more on the rough side.
Yeah, we agree there. And the intel that I've gotten, look, I don't know him, but the intel people that are around San Antonio was really good. Like I've asked people that have no reason to lie to me, and they're like, "No, great kid. Everybody loves him." So that's a good thing. And he's definitely developmental. Like, is there a world where he might play this year after the trade deadline if you trade somebody away and you get some injury? Yeah, sure. But I'm with you. I think he'll be in the G League quite a bit, and that's fine. He's on a two-way. Keep in mind, on a two-way contract, most two-way contracts are in the G League a lot. And that's where that's probably where he should be. And Ryan Schmidt's not going to be there anymore full time, but I think they're going to be trying to continue the cauldron of defense at College Park to bring it full circle to Kobe on this Kobe player capsule. The College Park cauldron continues. I think at least they're going to try to have that be the case.
Yeah, the continuity there. I think Ryan Schmidt laid the groundwork last year. I think that the rest of the organization and those who are working there will just be continuing to kind of work within that framework and within that foundation. Yep. And that's why it was so critical for Quinn to not let someone snatch Ryan Schmidt, away.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, that's pretty obvious. Obviously, he's just really good in general. But people, I get questions not all the time, but it's happened before. Like, why did? It's like, well, no. In general, people don't maybe know this. NBA assistant is a higher level job than G League head coach on the resume,
right.
And I think that. In order to keep Ryan Schmidt, it was like, hey, why don't you come over to the full-time bench, Ryan? You come chill with me. And look, I'm sure he'll still communicate with College Park on some level. All these guys. And that's the thing. I actually like this, and we'll avoid this rabbit hole. But Quinn really does unironically value the G League. Some coaches don't really care, and they kind of just say they do. Quinn actually cares about the G League. And that filters down all the way. He was a G League coach in Austin. He gets it, and they prioritize it. And I think last year we saw, I don't want to overstate it, but we saw why. Like, you get what happened with Kobe, what happened with Veet. Like, there's a reason why you invest in the G League.
Yeah, and maybe one small comment before we probably look to wrap here is, if you're sending your young first-round draft pick or young high second-round draft pick or whatever on a two-way contract or on the first year to the G League, and they're not getting the same messages, the principles, all that stuff is not consistent between what's going on down there. How are you going to be able to kind of use the G League to help those young guys get a consistent set of messages, principles, habits, points of emphasis, all that sort of stuff? And to me, that's the most important part of all that. And I know from afar, I would guess that that's what Quinn prioritizes, is that when they're coaching the G League, they're hearing all the same stuff, and it's not this different experience, because for too long the Hawks really just put together a G League roster from scratch every year as different people, and I think you could tell Quinn believes in building this thing from the ground up, and that habits, principles, and stuff have to be consistent across every facet of the organization. And that's what Ryan Schmidt helped him get going last year.
I strongly agree, and I will leave it there. Glenn, thanks for being here as always. Where can folks find all of your lovely work on the internet? I know I talked about you being sicko mode, and I definitely appreciate that. That was a positive thing. If people miss that, I very much enjoy when Glenn gets into Texas mode.
Term of endearment between Brad and me, if you don't know.
It certainly is. Yes.
Yeah.
That was positive.
ATL 29 at Willis_Glenn. Gonna try to dig into some other players, newer players. I've done some Dyson work, as you know. Today I did Barlow. It's funny, I did Roddy, and someone said, "How about Barlow?" I was like, "Oh, I got a little time today."
Okay.
So I did some Barlow. I might go back and pull some G League stuff. I mean, we I've already talked about Seth, but Seth Lundy had a really good year in College Park last year, so I might go pull really good. Is he going to play this year for the Hawks? I don't see it really happening, but they need shooters. So there's a path where like 4 or 5 injuries all at once or whatever. We hope that doesn't happen, but we're in the dead period. So next 2 or 3 weeks, I might break out a little bit more sicko mode and get some of that out there. So find me on Twitter or X, and we'll see if we can get some more content out there.
Yeah, at Willis_Glenn for Glenn. Also check out ATL on 29. I am an every show listener of that podcast with Glenn and Kevin Shinar and Tyler Jones. That's a fun listen and an informative one as well. There's plenty of room for all of us in the Hawks podcast space, and I'll be begging Glenn to come back on soon enough. Talk about. We have a few more of these left. Trey's still lurking. Jalen Johnson's lurking. Bogey, I think, a couple more. So we got some work to do. We still got 6 weeks till media day, something like that. So we got time. We're good.
We gotta stretch it out, right?
We do. It's been nice to have these for the dead zone. Glenn, thank you for doing this again, man. I very much appreciate it. As for everybody else, please subscribe to this show, like the pod on YouTube if you're watching right now, and we'll see you all next time.